the Chancellor's in a very lucky position of having everybody just tell her what to do. Basically, she's going to be announcing her own plans this coming Wednesday in the spring statement. As part of the build-up to that, political thinkers, political think tanks and opinion formers from all sorts of persuasions have been chipping in with what they think is the best possible plan, given the circumstances we're in. There's been one such event, a briefing for journalists and others from the Growth Commission. Shanker Singham is its chairman of that organisation and is joining us on the line right now, just off stage, Shanker, so we appreciate you coming straight to us in the aftermath of this. Let's just do the basics first. Who is the Growth Commission? What body of opinion do you represent?
Right, so the Growth Commission is an independent, non-partisan group of independent economic experts, and we're international, so there's about 13 of us, about 5 from the US, 2 from Japan, 1 from India, 1 from Mexico, and a few from the UK. And our sort of mandate, our job is basically to talk about how the G7 countries can improve their economic growth. So we do a lot of work in the UK and the US and Japan and a number of other countries.
There's a connection to Liz Truss, isn't there, in its origins?
I think I think it was really her prime ministership and the sort of focus on growth and the circumstances of her departure, I suppose, from that prime ministership that caused her to want to convene a group. But we are, we have our own views, and obviously we have a number of people from many different countries engaged in this process,
chipping in with ideas. I mean, everybody seems to talk about growth from almost all political persuasions, I have to say. So that in itself is not shocking. Okay, do you have a recipe for the Chancellor, which even at this late stage, you would like her to pay attention to?
Yeah, I mean, I think, generally what we do is we talk to countries about how to grow their economies and increase GDP per capita over the next sort of long period, 10, 20 years. Looking at the UK, I think we have 3 crises at the moment that warrant emergency measures. We have a growth crisis where GDP per capita is decreasing in the UK. We have a fiscal crisis. There's a massive sort of spending overrun versus revenue shortfall of about £38 billion. And we have an export crisis that, trade in goods, exports in goods is going down, has been going down for the last couple of years. And that can't be traced back to either the COVID lockdown or Brexit processes that were in place in 2021. So
it's worth me just interjecting then. You cannot, many people would hear about an export crisis and would make the point that, well, some kind of rearrangement along the lines of what we used to have when we were in Europe would help that enormously. Do you not agree with that?
No, so if you actually look at the numbers, and bear in mind that the EU imposed all of the post-Brexit measures immediately at the end of the transition period at the beginning of 2021, after that period, for the next couple of years, exports were rising. In fact, rising at a faster pace than they were rising before the COVID lockdown caused them to obviously crater. This is something else. This is, I think, more to do with the effectiveness and the reaction of business to the environment in which they find themselves. So I do think that we should, and we've recommended doing as much as possible with the EU in the context of the reset, that does not cross the line in terms of independent trade policy and regulatory autonomy. You need to maintain your regulatory autonomy because of the elephant in the room, which is the US tariff policy that will come at us on April the 2nd.
Yes.
We need to make sure that we can get a deal done with the US, and probably the biggest thing that faces the government right now, bigger in terms of effect, is what is the answer to the US trade policy, trade tariff when it comes out on April the 2nd?
Is that the single piece of
get the deal done?
Yeah, is that the single piece of work which should be at the top of the priority list for all politicians, but particularly maybe those in the Treasury? Would that help?
Yeah, well, Yeah, we've looked at the numbers here, and if you have a scenario where we don't have a trade deal with the US, or we pay these tariffs and we've locked into European regulation in, let's say, the agricultural veterinary area that that the government has talked about, then the cost of that in GDP terms is anywhere between 6 and potentially as much as 9%. I mean, it's a huge cost. Conversely, if you are able to do a deal with the US, you are able to improve your regulatory environment. You are able to do some of the things that we recommended. You're looking at about a +5. So in terms of what is going to make the biggest difference to the UK, the ability to do that deal with the US, not pay those tariffs, and within that context, you can do a lot to improve the relationship with the EU as well, as long as you don't cross that line that I mentioned. That is the single biggest challenge. It's facing the government. And it's also the one that's going to hit the government first, because this will all happen on April the 2nd.
Yeah, it's hoving into view, and very quickly, isn't it? Just looking at some of the other suggestions, which I think was part of your presentation today. Mm-hmm. Corporation tax, you say, should come down to 21%. It was fiddled with multiple governments, wasn't it? It's sitting at 25 today. What would the 4% difference make, do you think? Why would that be a help?
So our corporate tax proposals are sort of consistent also with other proposals we're making. I think what's happening now in the world is that there is a big sort of fluxional time where lots of supply chains are moving. And what you want to do is put a corporate tax rate on there that will attract elements of the global supply chain to the UK. And if you have a corporate tax rate of 25, that's going to be very difficult to do, especially when the US is talking about moving its rate to 21. So that's, one.
Well, when you say it's difficult to do, you can just make the decision. You're saying we will be a poor comparator as a result, and we will suffer as a result.
We will suffer because those decisions that are made in boardrooms that are being made right now, because of the US tariff, proposals about where to locate manufacturing and production, will be made, to our disbenefit. So we're going to have to move as much as we can to create the kind of environment that says to boardroom that's making those decisions, you need to locate that bit of the supply chain in the UK.
Can I just also go about tax rates? Because you do, I think, have an opinion on this. And I was reading over the weekend another bit of work that's been done. Under our present tax arrangements and the way the various bands kick in as you earn steadily more money, for those who are earning of the order of magnitude of 6 figures, of around the £100,000 mark, it's actually better if I earn £99,999. I'm much better off than somebody earning 120k, 130k, isn't it? The way the tax works.
Yeah, so you're referring there to what's sometimes called fiscal drag, which is the loss of the allowances that happen to people at that level of salary.
So you make an appeal to scrap all this, yeah? You think it should be addressed?
Yeah, it definitely has to be addressed, because essentially you're taking some of the people who you want to incentivize the most, and you're effectively hitting them with a 60 to 70% tax rate. So that is obviously extremely counterproductive. This is the group we want to be incentivizing to work. We want those people to aspire to go up the salary level.
All right, and that's part of your package of recommendations. Just one final thing. Non-dom status was has been addressed by the incoming Labour government right away. You don't agree with that?
No, I think we've got another problem here in the UK, which is the sort of exodus of very productive sort of millionaires. And non-dom is part of this, and certainly our calculations suggest that the loss of people who are leaving because of the change in the non-dom status is probably...
It's a handful of people, isn't it?
But there's a handful of very high-earning people, and the handful of very high-earning people translates into about £5 billion in tax revenue losses, up to over 5 years, 18 to 23 billion pounds. So it's a small group, but it's a lot of tax revenue. But more importantly, I think what's also happening is there is a general exodus because of the crises that we talked about of people who are leaving building for, better opportunities and so forth. And that is, I think, what also has to be created. So non-dom, we would change that because we want the signal to be, to bring those people back. But we also, you have to do a suite of things in order to get supply chains to reorient to the UK and move production and manufacturing and all the jobs that come with that back to the UK. And I think if we're able to do some of these things, then we can reverse some of that outflow of productive people that we're currently seeing.
And just one final thought. I did say I've had two final thoughts here because I've spotted in your list of recommendations the tourist tax. This hasn't been a very high priority in the political discussions, but you make the argument that actually it disincentivises tourists to come here because things are too expensive.
Yeah, and again, it's another comparative example. So what you are seeing now is you're seeing a lot of tourists, particularly from China and the Middle East, who typically would have come to the UK, to London or other places to shop and to spend money, are now going to places like Paris and Milan and other places.
Really? Is there data on that?
So we are losing.
Is there good hard data on that?
Yes, there is. Yeah, there is. And some of that's in fact, we made this proposal not just today, but actually in the run-up to the autumn
into the budget itself.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Well, she didn't listen then. Who knows, Shanker? Second time around, they may be paying attention. Who knows? Thank you very much indeed for spending a few minutes with us. Shanker Singham, there's Chairman of the Growth Commission.
LBC News.